Mr. Carver now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I've come here, this is the first interjection I've made since joining this committee, and I hear talk of a process of military integration. Military positions haven't converged yet. Yet, they said. And, of course, the initial goal of military autonomy. Well, politicians from my side of British politics, the Euro-critical side of politics, we were called alarmists for suggesting the integration of the EU military was a desire of the EU institutions. And yet we come here today, and this is exactly what's on the cards. Nick Clegg, the former Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, even called us alarmists. You know, well, the proof here is in the pudding. You know, let's be far more honest, I think, not just in the institutions. This is a very honest debate. I think we need to be honest, as was laid out by Mr. Bolero over there, indeed, Farrell Losing. We have to have this debate far more openly in the Member States, and I think you will see a very different response from the public to what is actually being discussed over here. I was astonished, I must say absolutely gobsmacked, at the suggestion that an EU military force would have been able to solve the crisis early in Mali, Libya and Syria, had a fully integrated PESCO possibly have been in place. To me, that's just a ridiculous assumption. And of course, such intervention would have been in the name of the European Union, not in the name of individual member states. There was talk of naval cooperation. Well, the Horizon programme, where my country withdrew from the Type 42 frigate programme, completely underlines, you know, why this approach cannot work. And there's been naval cooperation, certainly in my country. You know, in the 1980s, the Royal Naval and Marine Corps had a component part of 4-5 Commando Royal Marines serving. There was a company of Dutch Marines serving with them. It's a ridiculous situation. It's a ridiculous suggestion. And there was talk of now, through PESCO, have had defence in Europe for 20 years. Well, I'm sorry, with respect, it goes back much further than that. It goes back to April 1949, when NATO was formed. And the unwillingness of member states such as Lithuania, as outlined by one of the speakers, underlines that this change in nature of the European, completely through a suggestion of QMV, really underlines that this will ultimately be the European Union's downfall. I really do believe that.
Chair, well, in view of the time constraints, I won't be able to respond to every speaker. I'll try and just sum up. But of course, we are available for more specific and comprehensive answers. Now PESCO and the CSDP and the people drafting the Treaty of Lisbon was never intended to be a multinational European force, ever. For those drafting the Lisbon Treaty, whether you are happy with that or not, you may be disappointed. The idea was not to have a European army. However, and this may be the strength or the weakness of the whole instrument, is that it is within an intergovernmental framework still. So decisions are taken unanimously. This autonomous capability we're talking about is, Mrs. Gomez, the muscle that would have allowed the EU to take action in Libya, which was not there, did not allow the EU to take action. There was a political agreement, and you're absolutely right to underline the fact that there were decisions taken, but when it came to sending out troops, the UK and the French had a bit of a tug of war, and the British said, we can't do that without US support. And therefore, it's exactly in that type of situation where the US doesn't feel concerned, does not want to intervene, it's certainly not in the front line. They don't mind supporting, but they don't want to be in the front line in crises which affect us immediately, directly through immigration and so on. No need to go into details. And that's why we need these structures. So how we achieve this autonomous capability is what PESCO is all about. Now, we heard about the member states' positions, which reflects the state of play in discussions, but we fear that at the moment nobody is really thinking about moving towards integration. And to respond to the speaker from the Greens, nobody is obliged to have to integrate. I understand that this is a taboo issue in some countries, and this is exactly why nobody is obliged to be part of it. It's open to all. Nobody is obliged to enter into PESCO if they don't feel politically or financially or militarily able to do so. But for those who wish to join, there's no reason why they cannot join. So this is what is so clever about this whole instrument. And is it a game changer? Yes, as long as the member states play the game of integration and in an honest manner. You know, to respond to the German question, but it's the same from the French side. When, you know, if integration is taboo, then people, officials, industrialists will turn around and say, no, we don't want to do this. And our fear, people are going to be shouting, let's move forward, allowing European citizens that something is going to be done for European defence, but in fact nothing at all is going to be done, and in fact we're going to be chipping away at European values, which will turn into a farce, and it's very, very sad.
Alors, merci pour toutes ces questions.
Thank you for your reactions, thank you for your questions. The 36 projects you mentioned, well, of course, there can be a review, a reassessment. Some projects can be clustered together, but we are not at a stage now where we can say which projects will be selected. There was a question with regard to PESCO, whether it would be possible to have deployment of operations on the ground. The answer would probably be no, because the treaties are pretty clear on this. All EU missions can only be decided by the European Council on a unanimous basis. So this means that it would not be operational, or perhaps it would be involved in a mission which would not be bearing the EU flag. So PESCO would not be committing the European Union. Simply only the European Council, voting unanimously, can decide on that. Then there was mention of the fact that public opinion might have a negative reaction to greater integration in defence and military areas because, as has been mentioned, there are different sensitivities on this. PESCO can be good for some people, not for others. Sweden may decide not to be part of this, and then later on it may decide that it wishes to join. It's important to underline that if Swedish public opinion is more complex in terms of this type of integration and defence because of the situation and the vision of international relations in Sweden, in the rest of the European continent, in fact, defence integration, military integration is seen as something quite positive. France and Italy, it's one of, you know, according to the Eurobarometer, it's one of the most positive aspects in some countries of any European policy, which proves that a European defence, a two-speed defence policy, keeping the doors open for anybody who wants to join the first group or the inner core, is a very positive and a very democratic thing, in my view. I'm not just talking to the Swedes, of course, but to the Greens as well. Defence integration in the EU Europe is very progressive. Let's not imagine that it's a militarisation of Europe. On the contrary, it's a better way of controlling and monitoring the military instrument. Now to Mr. Linz's question. Coherence and consistency between French and German. There are historic facts which mean that the Germans are very institutional in their vision of integration of Europe. They think of Brussels. The French tend to be more operational. They're talking about deployment of missions. They're more proactive. And this is reflected in the PESCO discussions. And one thing, the role of the European Parliament, I think it's essential. They have an anchor role to play in PESCO. Through the European Defence Fund, the European Union and the Commission could really get into PESCO, and I think it's important to try and do so and see what is possible and what one can avail oneself of.